Missing people are quite possibly the worst kind of reality. They are not dead. We assume that they're still alive. We pray to whatever God we worship for their safe welfare. But what do we do when they never come back? Hello, I'm author Donald Allen Kirch, and I invite you to share this moment with me as I suspend both time and space.
Forget the world you know. Enter a bizarre dimension where the strange and unusual guide your imagination towards the unimaginable. Life is stranger than fiction in these true stories, where the ordinary is replaced with the extraordinary. Explore strange legends, weird myths, and odd folklore. The facts are laid before you to examine. You're invited to draw your own conclusions on these true stories of the paranormal.
New York City is a flavor all to herself. She has her glories, her sorrows, and her skeletons. Some skeletons refuse to keep quiet. There is an old tale told by the cabbies that as young men they had all picked up a rather tall-looking gentleman off the corner of 45th Street. He would be dressed well in a business suit. He would speak clearly, although none ever seemed to remember where he wanted to go. He would have a conversation with them filled with simple yes or no questions. The only problem? Their passenger was a ghost. He had been missing since 1930 and presumed dead since 1939. He was known as New York Supreme Court Judge Joseph Force Crater, and at one time he was dubbed the Missingist Man in New York. On August 6, 1930, Judge Crater had just walked out of a fine restaurant located on the corner of 45th Street with some friends and had planned on attending a local Broadway show. He was last seen walking down that street while his friends had hailed a cab. Nothing else is known of the man, his fate, or motive behind his disappearance. Crater was originally from Easton, Pennsylvania, and was the eldest of 4 children. Graduating from Lafayette College and a student from Columbia University, there were high hopes for the man. His parents were extremely proud of him. As far as anyone was aware, he had always done his job well and was considered an honest person to deal with. Sometimes his means were questionable, but the end results always harvested a good outcome. Things turned fantastic for him just 4 months before his famous disappearance, when then-Governor Franklin Delano Roosevelt appointed him as an associate judge to the New York Supreme Court for New York County. Roosevelt had plans for Judge Crater. He was going to help him clean up New York City. Like all professionals, Crater needed some time away from his daily grind. So, in the summer of 1930, both he and his wife, Stella Mance Wheeler, vacationed at their summer house in Belgrade, Maine. From the wife's later testimony, the vacation was a fun and energetic one until one late July evening when her husband received a rather odd telephone call. She stated that the call did not appear to bother her husband and remembered no tense reply coming from him other than an offhanded remark stating that he had to return to the city to, quote, straighten out those fellows. Who those fellows were has been a mystery for decades. With a heavy heart, Crater's wife said her farewells and watched her husband leave for New York City, hoping that he could return in time for her birthday party on August 9th. Nothing appeared to be out of the ordinary, and Judge Crater left his wife in good spirits. Like most prominent people of the time, Crater had a Fifth Avenue apartment. It was believed by his wife that he had ventured home to New York, taking care of important business. Instead, investigations after his disappearance proved he took a detour to Atlantic City with his mistress, a showgirl named Sally Lou Ritz. He, it had been discovered, had made 2 secret trips on August 1st and the 3rd, giving him plenty of time to uphold his August 9th promise to return for his wife's birthday celebration. Witnesses testified seeing the judge in his courthouse chambers just before his disappearance, going over his court records. Perhaps he was setting up his schedule for the coming caseload. No one knows. Then there's the mystery of the money. Crater had his assistant, Joseph Mara, cash 2 rather large personal checks for him, adding up to an impressive sum of $5,100. That's the equivalent of about $67,900 today. After cashing the checks, Mara had been ordered by Crater to place the vast amount of cash into 2 separate briefcases. Both Crater and his assistant took the cases to his apartment, where Crater then gave Mara the rest of the working day off, a rather uncharacteristic thing for the judge to do. In all rationality, by all accounts, at this point, nothing could be characterized as strange or unusual. People in the 30s did not trust banks due to the real Great Depression. Crater bought 1 ticket to a nearby Broadway performance called Dancing Partner, playing at the Belasco Theater. Calling a cab, the man then went to his favorite chop house on 45th Street, where he ran into some personal friends, inviting them all to share a meal with him. With his mistress, the judge stayed, enjoying his meal well past 9 p.m. Now this is strange due to the fact that Crater was known for his punctuality, and having stayed past 9 p.m., he missed the curtain rising for his show. Could the judge have been waiting for someone to show up, or was he concerned about being alone? All important questions still unanswered. Soon, fate caught up with Joseph Crater. It was time for him to leave. His friends, one lawyer who had worked with him several times in the past, last saw the judge walking down a nearby street as they all hopped into a taxi. There was no ceremony. There was no need. Crater was a solid citizen with a noble and bright future. Who knew that this would be the very last time anyone would ever see him? Here is where the heart of the mystery lies. What happened to Judge Crater after that last fateful meeting? Researchers, historians, and a few fellow writers of the strange and unusual have tried to answer these questions for decades. Was he simply murdered or mugged? Did he run off to restart his life somewhere else? Could he have more than one lover? As a politically appointed judge, were there dark and dangerous secrets about to be made public upon the man, ending his grand career? All merely questions bordered with vast speculations. One thing is for certain: no one ever saw Judge Crater again. Perhaps one of the most surprising mysteries of Judge Crater's disappearance was in the fact that no one at first did anything about it. His wife called around to both friends and family after he failed to return to Maine on her birthday, and that was 10 days after the fact. It was only after he failed to report for duty at court that his fellow judges took matters into their own hands. Police were finally notified on September 3rd that there might be a problem. Once the investigation had started, it became a national obsession. People disappear every day, but none were as straight arrow or as powerful as Crater. This was back in the day when ordinary people believed in government and thought all elected officials were there for both God and country. To have such a prominent man just disappear was an unusual occurrence. It was discovered that all of the judge's safety deposit boxes were emptied and that the suitcase filled with the money went missing. It did not help matters when the police became bogged down with thousands of false leads which seemed to flood their office daily. In October, a grand jury was asked to investigate the case, looking over 1,000 papers and calling 95 witnesses to the stand. No one knew where, who, or how to begin. It was as if the man just vanished off the face of the earth. Their conclusion was,
the evidence is insufficient to warrant any expression of opinion as to whether Crater is alive or dead, or as to whether he has absenced himself voluntarily, or is the sufferer from disease in the nature of amnesia, or is the victim of crime.
On June 6, 1939, Judge Crater was officially declared dead in absentia. His case, Missing Persons File Number 13595, was closed in 1979. Authorities revealed in 2005 that a letter was brought forward written by Stella Good after her death. Passing away from natural causes at the age of 91, she had written a confession prior to her death, offering up a needed explanation. By her account, Judge Crater had been killed by police officers Robert Good, her husband, and Charles Burns. Burns had also been sometimes associated and a bodyguard with the famous Murder Incorporated. Mrs. Good also implicated her brother Frank, who had been a cab driver at the time. Perhaps this is why Crater's ghost is sometimes seen in a cab. In any case, the letter went on to state that Crater's body had been buried under a boardwalk area near West 8th Street in Coney Island, Brooklyn, at the current site of a New York aquarium. Upon later investigation by the NYPD, there were no reports in the 1950s of skeletal remains ever recovered during the construction of the aquarium in question. If a human body were there, someone would have found it. The letter is now considered a hoax. For many years, in American culture, to say the phrase "to pull a crater" was considered an act of voluntary disappearance. Comedians and nightclub performers alike often used the line, "Judge Crater, call your office," if their audience became too deadpan. Warner Brothers took Crater's disappearance a step further when promoting their 1933 film, Bureau of Missing Persons. They stated that they would pay Judge Crater $10,000, $170,000 in today's value, if he'd just walk up to any box office and claim his ticket. A ticket stayed in each box office while the movie played, addressed to the judge. There were no takers. Who among us has not wished to just start over, to simply walk away from our troubles and begin a new life, to one day wake up and be someone else? Perhaps that is what Judge Crater did. Perhaps he started a new life, met someone, and had a simple, stress-free existence. Perhaps there is the dark and dank reality of this world. The judge could have been playing with monsters, and sometimes monsters bite back. So, the next time you are in a New York City cab, up or around the corners of 45th Street, and a tall, well-dressed gentleman enters saying nothing, well, good luck to you too. Well, this concludes our journey into both the strange and the bizarre. If you are curious, to read some of my personal works, please go to donaldallenkirch.com. That's Donald Allen, A-L-L-E-N, Kirch, K-I-R-C-H. One word, donaldallenkirch.com. Tune in next time when I will introduce you to yet another story that is stranger than fiction. So, until then, I wish you unpleasant dreams. Good night.